I think there's a lot of recent tools out there right now, which make getting into investigator-initiated trials now probably the best time to get involved.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Ophthalmology Experience, powered by Boost Patients. Today we're joined by Dr. Brad Hall. Dr. Hall is a founder of SENGI. It's a clinical research organization specializing in investigator-initiated trials in eye care. He works directly with ophthalmologists and optometrists to turn their research ideas into published studies faster, easier, and with greater impact. His work shows how both optometrists and ophthalmologists can generate meaningful data, strengthen clinical decision-making, and lead studies that shape the future of eye care, all while continuing to focus on patient care. Dr. Hall, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Yes, and I'm also looking forward to learning quite a bit about this topic. Admittedly, the practice I'm with, we do little clinical research, but it's not a huge strength area for me. So I'm really looking forward to asking you a few questions and learning a little bit more.
Great.
So can you tell me kind of what first inspired you to start Sengi and kind of focus on helping ophthalmologists and optometrists run and investigator-initiated trials?
Sure. Well, so I'm a vision scientist by training. So I got my PhD in vision science in 2014. That's where I got my first taste of clinical research. So
Hmm.
I did a study in graduate studies where we took contact lenses off of patients and we looked at what kind of bugs were living on their lenses. So that got me interested. And throughout my career, I've been on the sponsor side in some trials trying to get FDA approval, and I've also been on the CRO side for FDA trials. But like you alluded to, my focus right now has been investigator-initiated trials. So I
Yeah.
got started. So I met an individual waiting in line at an airport, um, and they were doing these types of trials, and we got to talking, and they were retiring. And so they started to refer patients to me, and they were kind enough to mentor me and teach me what they knew about investigator-initiated trials. So I've been involved in these for the past 6 or 7 years.
So, before this individual came up to you in the airport, which isn't that how we all meet people? But, had you thought about it before? Like, what got you thinking about research?
So I'd been involved a little bit in clinical research, but before I was approached or met this individual, we kind of met in the same line at the airport to board the same flight. So it's an interesting experience.
Yeah,
You never know who you're going to meet where you are, but it certainly
yeah,
changed my life. But no, I had never thought about this. I never considered that and, investigators can run their own trials. I always had that picture in my mind that clinical trials are industry partners trying to get a medical device or a drug approved. But I'm glad that I did get introduced because I feel like investigators, ophthalmologists and optometrists are in the front lines. They're seeing patients every day. I feel like they have lots of real world experience and lots of great research ideas
yeah.
when they fund their own research. So I'm very pleased to be involved.
And I'm assuming that there's likely other eye care professionals that have either kind of peripherally been involved or who they themselves have been. I think that'd be pretty cool. Like I see this opportunity for a certain type of patient or diagnosis or some kind of clinical research opportunity, but they might think also kind of similar. Well, that's more industry or different. Maybe those people have different motives, or it's too big for me, or what are some things that you would say to those people that might be thinking it's too intimidating? Is it something that most clinicians can get into?
I think so. I think the biggest thing you need is a curiosity, um, and once you have that, I feel like you can fill in the rest of the pieces. The next piece you're definitely going to need is time. I mean, you can partner with people to help take off some of the burden, but certainly you as an investigator do need some time. You're also going to need some money, and the main cost is going to be if you want to do most of the research part in house, your main cost is going to be an IRB, which is a couple to a few $1,000s to get approval. But
Yeah.
it's certainly like the best place to start for an investigator would be a retrospective trial. I feel like it's the simplest. It's a good way to get your feet wet. So as clinicians, you're already going to have data from your patients. You're going to have data from them pre-treatment and post-treatment, so you can take that data and mine through it and try and publish a study if you want to.
So would you say that to those wanting to get into it, are those some of the most common barriers, like money, um, getting an IRB and just getting enough data to do that? And what are some of the ways that you would suggest people can overcome that?
Yes, certainly money can be a barrier. A retrospective study, like I mentioned, is a good way to get your feet wet, and that's probably the cheapest study to run because you're not paying patients to come in to your clinic,
Mhm.
um, and you can probably do a lot of the research part in house. The protocol is a lot simpler to write. You don't need an informed consent form. The IRB fee is also going to be a lot less expensive.
Mhm.
Um,
Is it better to partner with particular pharma or clinical research company to get started, or do you think people can do it more on their own?
I think it is possible to do it on your own, but it's a matter of time. So you're gonna there's gonna be a cost if you want to do it yourself. It's going to cost your time if you want to partner with somebody like a CRO or a biostatistician or a researcher at a university. You're going to have to pay them for your time. If time if money is something that you're going to need, certainly you can partner with industry. They do often fund investigator initiated trials. I think they're as interested as investigators are in the real world effects of treatments. FDA trials, when you're trying to get something approved, you can have quite rigid inclusion exclusion criteria, and then investigators and companies want to know the real world effects of the treatment. So you can reach out to industry to get some funding for your research idea.
Yeah, and you were kind of asking what I was thinking of asking you next, which was, how can a professional, an eye care professional, balance the demands of work doing a research trial and also just the day-to-day demands of what they do in their, whether they're in clinic or they're a surgeon or whatever it is that they do. I guess, would you say it's more of a, you have to really understand kind of what your limitations are, and you use the word time twice. That's why I think it's really important. It's understanding how much time you have to commit, and then understanding where your gaps are, and then how to fill those gaps, whether it be industry or if you have more time or you have more desire. So what would be your advice? I'm sorry, your advice in terms of balancing the two?
Sure, it can certainly be tricky, especially if you're going to be doing a prospective study where your patients are going to be coming in, you're going to be collecting data. Um, so, certainly, I think if you have industry funding, bringing on a partner, especially for your first trial, can be really helpful. So
Yeah.
they can help you with walking through the process of getting a protocol and writing an informed consent, getting IRB approval. I feel like once you've done one or a couple of those, you kind of understand the process. Most protocols and informed consents are pretty templated out. It's just a matter of filling in the study details, and so I think that's really helpful. And for the also for the analysis, bringing in a partner if your analysis is going to be complicated, and also maybe having somebody come in to do the medical writing if you want to publish in a medical journal or create slides for your conference. Once you get a few of those under your belt, if you're interested in spending the time to try and do that yourself, then you
Yeah.
certainly can. But for the first few ones, I certainly recommend partnering with somebody.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan of modeling what works and then making tweaks from there. Uh, don't always try to rewrite something that has already worked.
Right.
So getting the help from someone who has done it to get you started, I 100% agree, because I use that thought process in a lot of the things that I do to help manage practice. You know, um, hey, I don't mind collaborating and taking everyone's ideas and morphing that into one big great idea. I'm okay with that.
Right.
Um, so, um, are there any particular things that you're seeing in terms of trends in these investigator-initiated trials? Like, are there more trials related to the efficacy of certain drugs or drops? Maybe it's certain treatment procedures. So, what are you saying in terms of trends recently?
So I think it's pretty varied. It usually goes in cycles. When a new product is released, I think there's a lot of interest from industry and investigators because they want to know, hey, is this going to work for my patient population? How does it compare to current treatments? So I feel like the cyclical nature of new products always coming out. There's always something
Mm.
new to be involved in, which I think personally for me is pretty exciting. I get to look at the data, but I feel like it's probably equally as exciting for investigators when new treatments come out. They get to see if it's going to help their patients.
Quick break brought to you by Boost Patients. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a physician, a practice admin, or maybe someone on the marketing team, and you really have a singular goal. You want new patients, more consults, higher surgery volume. And oftentimes, when you want that, you think immediately about marketing, spending more on marketing, investing more in marketing. Maybe, but probably not. We've mystery shopped over 600 practices, and there's one commonality with all of them. They're not very effective and not very good at patient follow-up. So before you invest more money in marketing and more into that investment, you really need to understand how your practice is following up with new patients. So go to boostpatients.com, fill out the contact us form, and let me know that you want us to mystery shop your practice. We'll mystery shop it. We'll document how your practice follows up with your new patient lanes, and we'll share that information with you. Now, back to the show.
And for you personally, what would you say is like one of the most enjoyable studies that you've been a part of?
I think when we find something that we didn't expect, there was a study that I was a part of that was looking at IOL power calculation formulas, and we had an exploratory endpoint just to compare a new formula to an established one, and we found that the new formula was performing pretty well. So that spawned a head-to-head study between that the old formula and the new formula, and it's pretty exciting when just a one-off. Hey, let's look at this and see what happens, and you get a great result, and it spawns a new study. That's very exciting to me. You never know what you're going to find when you
Mm.
try to answer a research question.
Oh, that's very cool. Anything that we're going to see anytime soon, like for us to use?
Well, that particular formula was the Barrett the BTAL
Okay.
formula. Yeah,
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah.
yeah. The particularly the sum of segments
Yeah.
formula. So if you have that particular device,
Mhm.
then that's certainly something that you can see in your practice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not I don't do what you do, but I could see how that could be very rewarding to be involved in something like that and it change the trajectory or make a significant impact in how patients are treated or how physicians treat their, how they make decisions. So
Right.
it must be very rewarding.
It's rewarding as a patient as well. So
Mm.
I have had LASIK in the past, and it's interesting to see the continual advancements of getting better and better. It's not just trying to get patients to 2020 anymore. Now
Right.
the
Yeah, it's
studies
even
are
better.
trying to see how many people are at 2010.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so that didn't affect me, but pretty soon I'll be presbyopic, or pretty soon I'll need an IOL because I'll develop
Mm.
cataracts. So it's very interesting as a patient seeing what's out there and kind of planning, okay, this treatment's pretty well, maybe I'll consider that when I need one.
Yeah, I think the problem with being in the industry like myself, knowing that there's always better technology coming out every 6 months, 6 or 12 months, like I never want to pull the trigger and do it because you said presbyopic and that hit home for me because I've been struggling big time. But I'm like, well, maybe I'll wait for the next lens to come out and it'll be a little bit better and I won't lose my distance. Yeah, it's really cool to see the advancements and how quickly things tend to come and change uh, but seeing the inside of that factory sometimes it can make me afraid to pull the trigger because what's coming next year, right? What's Dr. Hall working on that's we're going to see next year?
No,
Um,
I hear you on that too.
yeah,
Just because, like you said, it's pretty quick to have something new coming out, some new shiny object, and you don't know if now's the time, or
yeah.
if you want to wait until a couple of years down the road.
So let me ask you about. Looks like you wrote a book called "Idea to Impact," and is idea spelled EYE?
Yeah,
Or-
I do like puns, so I had to throw the pun in there.
Okay, very cool. Well, what motivated you to write it, and like, what are some of the key points and key takeaways?
Sure. So, yeah, like you alluded to, the title of the book is "Idea to Impact." It's a modern blueprint for investigator-initiated trials in eye care. So, what I wanted to do was give investigators who are interested in doing their investigator-initiated trials sort of a blueprint and a framework to do it if they want to do it, especially if they want to do it DIY, or learn more about it. It has an overview of the framework. I think there's a lot of recent tools out there right now, which make getting into investigator-initiated trials now probably the best time to get involved.
Very cool. And I'm sure, how long ago, or how long does it take to write a book like that? And is it available now?
It is, so it's available. I can provide a link that you can throw it in your show notes. But
Yep.
so if anyone's interested in checking it out, you can go to sengiclinical.com/book, and then there's a universal book link there, so you can get it to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you want. To your first question, how long it takes to write a book?
Yeah.
From starting the idea to having it published, it took about a year. That wasn't all writing. There was probably 6 months of writing, and then editing, and designing, and uh, different things like that. But yeah, it's like anything. You just got to work a little bit at it every day, and eventually you'll get there.
That's true. That's true. I think that applies to many things. um, so I think, based off what I've heard so far, you're probably one of the best qualified people to talk about the future of clinical research. What do you think that looks like in eye care? What are some of the things that I think industry or investigator initiated trials will focus on, um, that you see coming in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think something that's pretty exciting right now is how technology is really helping enable this to be done so much smoother. So one thing in particular, a lot of these investigator-initiated trials are still done on paper, because EDC systems, if you've ever been part of an FDA trial, you've probably used an EDC system, but they're pretty cost prohibitive. But recently, there's been one that I've been able to partner with, and you can actually use it in your trial for pretty cheap. Also, like DocuSign and Zoom have become big since COVID. So now you can e-consent participants. So get on a Zoom call, send them a consent form via email. You can remote consent. You can also do remote surveys, send them to patients. So
Mhm.
if patients don't even have to come into the office, if you're doing a study where they're just answering a survey, they can, you can hop on a Zoom call, do remote consent, and send them the survey electronically. Um, that certainly really helps make everything a lot smoother. So I have been a part of one trial where there were no in office visits, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah, and then I think you get into a whole other host of questions and concerns about security and the ability for people to consistently connect, and how do you test certain things virtually? Have you done any studies that were, I guess you mentioned, are mainly virtual, and how do you get around those things?
So I mean, for something like doing e-consent and doing an e-survey, that's not necessarily timing specific.
Hmm.
So if you have a disconnection or something when you're on a Zoom call, you can just reconnect at another time. So
Yeah,
that's not necessarily an issue. But yeah, I'm trying to think. So I
like.
know there's one tonometer that you can that is approved for in home.
Mhm.
So I guess if you're hopping on a Zoom call and trying to walk a subject through trying to use the tonometer at home, and if
Yeah.
you had some technical issues, that might be an issue.
Have you come across any really good remote visual acuity solutions? Because we're trying to figure out how to do LASIK post ops, and we've been doing it some virtually, but it just seems like it's been hard to get off the ground because most LASIK patients are super happy and they'd be happy to have a quick remote Zoom call and just have a. I think though what you lose is you lose that in office wow factor of your seeing 2010, and so have you? I'm just picking your brain. Have you come across any good visual acuity systems that are remote?
No, not in any of the studies that I've done. I haven't seen any that are as good as bringing somebody in, and I think that's because for like if you're doing an investigator initiated LASIK trial, I feel like you want to use like established charts, or you want to use an established electronic system
Right,
in an established lane to try and get good data.
right.
I haven't seen anybody using that at home yet, but that doesn't mean it's not coming down the pipe. And I
Yeah,
think that would be pretty exciting if we had a validated instrument to use that patients could use at home.
yeah, yeah. I've seen some really cool examples of virtual exams, and so the way that some of these larger corporate vision chains are doing some of these remote exams with like you said, some virtual refraction and everything that's happening, and then they're controlling the dial remotely, and they're checking vision remotely, and they're doing everything one on one. That's like big so I know that technology and that probably going to progress over time. I just don't know if it's ever going to hit a point where people will be more accepting of that kind of exam or not. I guess only the future will tell.
Right. Yeah, there's also exciting, developments in virtual reality too, of putting on a headset
Yeah.
and testing visual fields. I've been a part of a study that was testing visual fields with a virtual reality headset, which is also pretty exciting.
Yeah, you can see how the technology and something like that progresses because when some of the first ones came out, I just remember comments. Some of the patients felt like they get dizzy, and it's just that some of the physicians didn't trust it as much. But I think the technology continues to improve, and I see more physicians getting on board with it. But it can be hard, right, to change the mindset for the standard of care for so long that they want that Humphrey visual field as opposed to a virtual reality headset. Uh, but I think we have to
Right.
show the efficacy of it. And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah. Well, if you know any, we're always trying to save space. We don't want to create a visual field room if we don't have to. So if you're aware of any really good ones, so I'd love to have the recommendation. Um,
Okay.
so, can you share, and I'm sure you've collaborated with other clinicians that have got their way into research. Do you have any examples of a real world situation where um, they got into it and they really made an impact or something just interesting that you can share?
Sure. So I was working with an optometry team. They had never done like an investigator initiated trial before, and I brought in to partner with them since they've never done one before. They want a little bit of help to get off the ground, but that study went really well, and that spawned. Trying to think, it was three or four more investigator initiated trials with the same industry partner who was funding, like providing grant funding for the study, and it's spawned from there. They've been talking with other sponsors, and I think they're also getting involved in FDA trials as well. So you never know how your first one is going to go, and how it can take off if you really want to be more involved in research.
Yeah, that's great. And I want to touch again on the money part because I think that's where my guess, because as an administrator being on the financial side, I think a lot of people may get stuck there. Um, I guess first question is, there is going to be some form of investment to get there, but do you see clinical research as a way for a practice to bring in to be a substantial revenue source?
I think it'll probably start off small, but I think as you do more and more trials and get more involved in more and more complex trials, I feel like it could be significant. But if you're only doing one investigator-initiated trial a year, like it's going to be a little bit of a boost, but I'm not sure you're going to see a huge impact. I feel like getting one under your belt and then having that spawning more, and then maybe you do 3 or 4 a year, and then maybe you get involved in multi-center FDA trials and just grow from there.
Yeah. Which I'm guessing it's probably like many other things in business that in order to really start realizing some kind of return, you have to start doing enough to have enough skill, to have uh, enough efficiency in what you're doing and enough resources so that it does start to, turn a profit, or you start to see the financial benefits from doing it. Because I've heard of some friends of mine that are in retina practices that do tons of studies, and they have teams, and they have a ton of resources, and it's a significant source of revenue for them, and a significant part of their practice and kind of their mission. But it's it's almost like, man, to really do it that well, you really got to invest a lot in the people and the processes and the partnerships with industry, and doing it. So, or so if somebody like me thinks, well, is it possible for the little guy to do it? Um, and uh, and so if the little guy were trying to get started, what are some of the ways that they can attract the industry support? Um, without feeling like they're trying to sell their soul just to get some money.
Well, so on the industry side of things, so there are wings of industry partners who want to attract investigators to do their investigator-initiated trials. So if you navigate to their website, they have a whole section dedicated to investigator-initiated trials. They'll even list study topics that they're interested in. So certainly you can take a look and see if there's anything that's interesting, and then you can reach out to them directly. They want to work with investigators. They'll handhold you through the grant process, and and you can get your study off the ground. I do. I'm going to circle back. I do still think that retrospective study is probably the easiest
Okay.
to run. You get your feet wet with a study protocol and applying to the IRB and data analysis and making slides for a conference and publishing in a peer reviewed study. And industry partners do fund a lot of retrospective studies, so you can get. If you want to do it in-house, you can get that covered. If you want to partner with a third party or consultants to help get this off the ground, they'll provide funding for that as well.
Okay. Well, you kind of answered one of my last questions, was if you're really thinking into getting into research, where should you start? Which it sounds like you might say start with a retrospective study, um, if that, maybe a little lower risk. But what is there anything else, just to kind of summarize our conversation? Like if there's any physicians or clinics out there thinking about getting into any form of research, like what would you suggest to them?
I would talk to other colleagues that have been involved and get an idea for what's involved and how much time's involved and what their experience has been, what industry partners they like to partner with, and I think that's a great place to start. It doesn't take long, maybe an hour, just to talk to people and go on a fact finding mission and see what's involved before you decide you want to jump right in.
Very practical advice, and thank you for teaching me something today. Because, like I said, I'm no research guru, so really, really appreciate you sharing your expertise. And yeah, thanks for spending your time with us today.
Well, thank you for chatting with me. I'm happy we got to connect, and certainly if there's anything else I can help with, don't hesitate to shoot me your questions. I'm always happy to answer.
Absolutely. Also, want to take the opportunity to thank the listeners for joining us today. If you want to catch up with the show, please make sure to subscribe and share us with your friends on social media. Another quick shout out to Boost Patients for producing the podcast. Boost helps ophthalmology practices get more new patients without spending a dime on marketing. You can learn more about them at their website, boostpatients.com, or check out the show notes. Until next week, have a good one.